So, firstly, I just want to welcome all my guest speakers. So, I want to introduce Omar and Elaine, who are part of the panel and will be for the rest of the year. The inspiration of having what we call the ABCs, or the AI Business Catalyst podcast series, which will last for a year, is to really give people insight on what the changes are in the industry. So we'll be running this every 2 weeks. We will have a break over your summer and our winter, mid-year break around July to August, and that will just be to give us a bit of time to go on holiday here and there. But the plan is to have amazing guest speakers throughout this. What I wanted to do is to start off with our panel that I had from last year that really spoke about AI and spoke to AI. And you were handpicked to be part of the panel discussion to transition people from looking at what are the success things that they would have for next year to what does 2025 look like, and connecting the various dots. As I mentioned, it's myself, Omar, and Elaine that are the co-hosts of this. Just a bit of information. Omar, great guy. Thanks, Omar, for joining us. He helps organizations shape digital strategy, about looking at business solutions, emerging technologies, and continuous learning. As I said, he's a great communicator. He works in business. He's looked at AI, and he also runs his own newsletter, The Analyst Architect, where he talks about topics around technology and so forth. We've also got Elaine, who is the Chief Architect and CTO at Aiden. He's also looks at enterprise architecture, business architecture, and is an amazing technology visionary. So he designs innovative solutions. He's also the founder of Iris Business Architect. For those who have wondered who designed Iris Business Architect, there he is. And he's been delivering architecture and various other things for many years now, Elaine. I won't say how many exactly, but he's really started to embrace the AI side of enterprise architecture and business architecture. Many of you know me. I am also the co-founder of Aiden. I started that about a year and a half ago. Oh no, 2 years ago. I don't know how long it's been, because I can see that there will be an integral link between AI and the roles that we play as architects and analysts in the future. And I'm also a trainer that specializes in training and certifying business architects, analysts, and now some of the AI. So we run some great AI training programs as well. And I've been doing this for a long time, I think, and very fortunate to say I have thousands of students from over 90 countries in the world, which is fantastic. Next on the list, Dora. The lovely Dora is an industry award leader in data, AI, and leadership. She specializes in empowering women in tech, which is great. Data leading and growth-driven professionals to accelerate career success and drive impact. So you've started your own business recently, Dora. That's what we spoke about last year already. Congratulations. That's a big leap, and also been traveling and speaking internationally. Then we look at Eric. Eric is an experienced enterprise architect, author of Getting Started with Enterprise Architecture, has over 15 years experience. He specializes in translating business strategy into effective implementations using enterprise architecture. Thanks for joining us, Eric. Then we have Angelo. Angelo likes to call him Angelo the BA. Angelo is a dedicated business analyst, YouTuber, and UX specialist. He's also a leader, and he helps professionals navigate their careers. So he emphasizes continuous learning, collaboration in the fields of analysis and user experience. Do check out his YouTube channel. It's awesome. Guest speaker, Kitty. So technically, Dr. Kitty Hung. Congratulations on that, Kitty. Kitty is the author of the Business Analyst in the Area of Generative AI. There you go. Awesome. She brings valuable insights into how generative AI is transforming business analysis and the strategies needed to adapt. Jesper, our guest from Australia, so very early morning for him. Jesper you work at DX Technology, Jesper. You focus on agentic AI frameworks, which is really awesome. We had a lovely discussion around blue ocean strategies and various other things. Don't let Jesper fool you. He's very much a futurist when it comes to a lot of his thinking. He looks at different systems, government methodology. He drives thought leadership in developing scalable and secure agentic AI solutions, which is great. And he does a lot more than that, but there's only so much you can put in the text. Jessica, lovely to have you here. A great conversation we had. Went way over the allocated time. Jessica is an information architect, has extensive experience in business architecture, data architecture, taxonomy, ontology, speaks a lot about AI, how does it work with the different kinds of data, how you structure data and so forth. She brings information systems that enhances user experience and supports business goals. And you're currently working at, where did you say?
At Adobe.
Adobe.
With Adobe, yes.
Yeah. And then we have Tiankai. So Tiankai is a data and AI strategy director at ThoughtWorks. Well done. Author of Humanizing Data Strategy. He's also a TEDx speaker, a data musician. So he does these great things on LinkedIn, sharing stories about data using music. So it's really, I get a laugh sometimes, and sometimes I think it's quite insightful. Thanks, Tiankai, because you're quite funny. He brings a unique perspective in developing data strategies that humanize. So I think that's a great topic to bring into the fold. And then we have Andreas, also a funny guy, lots of fun as well. Andreas is a seasoned data analytics and AI leader in a proven track record of building successful analytical functions. He focuses on driving strategic advisory on data and AI strategies, ethics, and auditing AI models. So I'm going to be handing over and turning off the presentation. And I'm going to hand over to Omar, who's going to be moderating and managing a lot of the questions. So for those who have joined us from the inner circle, thank you for joining. But we'll let the team really manage the questions right now. Today, we're starting off with connecting the dots. Our first session is really talking about the architecture and all the aspects of what might be with AI and business analysts and architects and enterprise architects and all of the different things that we're trying to navigate through. So we're really looking at how do we rethink business with the onset of AI. So Omar, over to you.
Thank you so much, Didri, and thank you everyone for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or shall I say good day, everyone, based on your time zone. And welcome again to today's panel discussion on AI Business Analyst podcast. AI is not just a hype nowadays. It is not a trendy technology anymore. It is driving the force behind transformation of all the industries. It is redefining how we work. It is affecting how we make decisions. And of course, it creates values behind using. In today's session, we have an incredible lineup of expert speakers and industry leaders, which leaves me humble and pleased to have each and every one of them in our podcast session, bringing unique insights from different disciplines. We are talking about EA, AI, strategy, business analysis, information architecture, customer experience, data, and more. And our goal today is to connect the dots between these different disciplines and explore how AI is shaping the future of business. So before we hear from our guests, I encourage all of the audience to engage and drop your thoughts into the chat box. React to the insights that you find them valuable. And yes, let's start. To start our conversation, I would like to explore how AI is transforming business operating models across multiple industries and roles, of course. And I would like to start with Jesper, and then, of course, I can hear from Eric, Katie, and Jessica. So what does this transformation look like from your perspective, Jesper? And the most important thing, how real is it? How real the transformation is?
That's a great question, Omar, and thank you for inviting me to be here. When I look at these questions, I try to make things as simple as possible. And really, what is the difference now with AI? If we really want to crystallize it, what's the difference in the new world compared to the old world? And in my mind, it can be summed up in one word, and that's autonomy. That is the challenge that we are facing. When AI is becoming independent and is making its own decisions, we don't have a precedent for that. So that is changing things a lot. And I find it very useful to look at these changes across what we're calling the 5 maturity levels that start at ad hoc, repeatable, defined, managed, and optimized. Because of governance and the frameworks are changing across the maturity levels. In the beginning, not a lot of changing from an organizational sense in level 1 and 2, and begin to level 3. Then we're starting to get the operating model changes. And then in level 4 and level 5, obviously autonomy is even greater. And then everything is changing. And we're not really clear, I think, today how these models are going to look like.
Perfect perspective, Jesper. Thank you for sharing it. And Katie, do you think what is the most important thing behind this transformation that looks like?
So I'm speaking on behalf of the business analysis community. If you ask me 5 years ago, when I gather all the requirements from the business, then the next step is I'll ask myself a question: how should I structure my requirements so that my requirements will be good enough to be understood by the technical development community? But now I am asking myself a different questions. After gathering all the requirements, I'm asking myself, how do I make my requirements really understood by AI so that the AI can generate the best possible code to execute the best possible prototype and applications? There's I can see the transformation. We business analysts not just have to upskill, reskill ourselves. We have to change our mindset. I'm not dealing with another human beings, technical developers. Because 5 years ago, if I want to bring out my requirements, I can draw some UML notation, BPMN notations. And now, the UML notation and BPMN notation have absolutely meaningless to AI. Because AI, by natural language processing, AI can understand natural language. So I throw the list of requirements, and then if the AI doesn't do a good job, I just keep generating until it pins down to the perfect execution I like.
Perfect perspective, Katie. Thanks so much. And Eric, from your perspective, do you think how real is this transformation from an EA perspective or other perspective, of course, if you would like to share it?
Yeah, as some of you might know or might not know, I have this background in the healthcare industry. Worked for a number of hospitals over the past few years. And back in the day, there was very little room for innovation, let alone for something as comprehensive as AI. Today, however, I see that various hospitals are actually quite busy with experimenting with AI, and they have all these AI tools scanning through various diagnoses or patient data, which eventually will save physicians a lot of time because these AI tools are producing these texts that are ready to use without having the physicians to write everything themselves. So entire treatment plans are being handed to the physicians in merely seconds. But then again, it's closer to automated processes than the real power of AI as it is today. Now, it's my belief that what would make it really something if AI was able to suggest on its own alternative treatment methods or different ways of performing surgery based on the evidence it found when examining the patient data or of hundreds of thousands of performed procedures. And I think that if we are able to get to that point, then I think that AI could definitely be made part of business objectives and goals and eventually find its place in transforming business models. But the application of AI as we see today, at least in the Netherlands, is still too focused on automating certain processes, which is a first step in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. So it's a good thing that we are experimenting with AI. And I think that in the near future, AI will be considered an essential part of any organizational strategy.
Of course, with no doubt that healthcare is one of the main industries that is reflecting how AI is valuable in the implementation in this specific industry. And this get me to the information architecture where Jessica can, I think, put into a lot of insights about this part. From your perspective, what you can add to this particular area, how AI is real, what is important, is it important thing in the transformation and so on?
I think so, Mar. And what's interesting is we're not really thinking, or I guess that we're just starting to discuss the idea of roles changing and expertise changing. When we give birth to new roles or role types or different roles and responsibilities, then the entire business process changes as a result. So I think that we are all in a little bit of a murky area in terms of having really concrete definitions of what success looks like and what the business approach looks like. One thing that has come out is one of the requirements for AI. We know that AI requires clean, high quality data that is structured and is semantic. And that reality has hit a lot of organizations because of messy internal data structures, lack of attention, lots of syntactic data and not semantic data. There needs to be descriptive data, the taxonomy, the ontology, the knowledge graph, the way that we present our data within an AI ecosystem needs to truly define the business. And many of us have not really tackled that really difficult step and stage of shaping, formatting, and semantically enriching our data to prepare for AI. And what's interesting is it's like approaching it from both sides, everything converges in the middle, and all of a sudden we're seeing rise of these new roles and responsibilities within that landscape and a shifting of priorities. So I think applying old processes to this new landscape is getting a lot of us in trouble. Because it's putting a round peg in a square hole, for lack of a better example. So,
spot on, Jessica. And this brings us to the next point where the human perspective is crucial. Of course, understanding the human perspective behind this transformation. That's why I would like to start my second question with Angelo. And of course, we need to move to Dora and Andreas as well in this particular question. From your perspective, Angelo, how recognizing human needs transform the impact of AI on the business operating model and digital transformation also as well? Also, when we speak about the impact, do we have specific strategies that business can employ to maintain the human element within the implementation of AI strategies? You are on mute, Angelo.
Apologies. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to look at it, and I think several people have already kind of touched on it already. When I look at AI, it's like the inverse of how we have seen technology evolve in our history today. First, somebody wants to do something, then they find a better way and a faster way, and then another better way and a faster way, and we're moving along technology. Now it feels like we've created this thing that nobody's ready for. Nobody really understands how it's going to work for us as humans. So now we're trying to catch up to the technology. And one thing that kind of visualized in my head while I was trying to figure out how I wanted to verbalize it, it's almost like we built a missile first, and now we're trying to figure out how to get humans to ride it. And so now we got to think, okay, how could we make this missile work for human transport to get us someplace where we actually want to be? And in a way, we have to rethink about the limitations of the human capabilities and also the desires of the human capabilities. What are we actually trying to accomplish? What is the goal of the person who's doing it? And how can we get them to essentially adopt this? And one thing that's nice from my perspective as a UX person is that people haven't changed that much in the time that AI has come up, and understanding how to work with the human element is still staying the same. We're just figuring out how to add this new toy the human experience, and a lot of the limitations that have already existed and shaped the way we go about creating a good user experience, right? Like how do humans think? How do humans process? What is the context in which that human is existing? What are all the things happening around our world? What other problems do I have in the context of this thing that you're trying to solve for me to really make it work? I think Eric gave a great example with the hospital example. Sure, you can throw a bunch of data at a doctor, but the doctor is in the room with the patient. What's going to actually work for that doctor while he or she is having that conversation with that patient, right? What do they actually want to hear? What do they want to know? They don't want to know everything, right? How can we feed that context and shape the way that we're essentially spitting back the output of AI so that it actually works in the context of like real human lives?
Great perspective, Angelo. And by that, Tiankai, do you have any other perspective on maintaining the human aspect within the transformation? Would you like to share some examples about that as well?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to AI transformation, I often think about change management overall, right? And I have a lot of expertise coming from data governance, right? And data governance has that specialty that everyone knows it's important, but no one wants to do it. And AI almost feels like the opposite, right? Where it's really unclear why it's important and what is the value that it's bringing in many cases, but everyone wants to do it anyway. So it's almost like everyone wants to jump on this wagon of AI, ChatGPT, chatbots, Gen AI, right? But it's not really in many organizations clear what the value even is. And when we talk about what the value of AI even is, there's also a difference between what it means for the organization as a whole and what it means individually for certain people that are actually acting with it and interacting with it. And that is also a topic then where, for me, it really boils down to mindset and skill set, right? Mindset of everyone ideally knowing what to use AI for and being aware what actually the opportunities, but also the risks are of working with AI. And then skill set actually interacting with AI in the right way and knowing what to do and how to navigate in the right way. So yeah, and from that kind of way, I think if we put the human being in the middle, it's really trying to address both mindset, skill set, and then basically creating the right actions and the right programs to build that up.
Great perspective and great examples as well. Taking this into the next level, Dora, do you have any strategies to empower teams, to empower groups using AI, how they impact the operating model of the business, transformation, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, thank you, Mar. First of all, such great points. I'm afraid I don't want to repeat a lot of what the panel says here, but I love the whole idea of connecting the dots and how it's really up to us. And this is a pivotal time. And I think Angelo said it, Tiankai said it, Jessica mentioned earlier, a lot of the things actually are problems that are just getting highlighted right now with AI. But even the fact that we need to pay more attention to the human side of things, it's something that's been around for a while. It's just that we need to focus on this right now. To your point, we need to focus on this even more than before. To your point, how do we empower teams? The thing is just to focus, and there's a responsibility and accountability here to make sure that we educate and we upskill, we rethink the roles, which I think Jessica mentioned it earlier. It's how we think about this, the mindset that Tiankai shared about, but also the skills. I think this is where the upskilling and the reskilling, it's less on the technical side of things and more on how do we work with each other, how do we bring the empathetic side, and how do we make sure that we keep our critical thinking still, right? Use AI, it's great, but use it for the lower value tasks that we can automate. I think there is a risk here that we need to be careful about, and that is to not replace our critical thinking. To your question is, how do we make sure, and I know we'll talk more about from a leadership perspective as well, to foster really a culture where we are thinking about how we use AI to support our decisions, not to replace our critical thinking, our way of deciding what we need to do, but enhance it. And also just nurture that culture of ethical use of AI. I think those are some of the things to think about.
I totally agree with you, Dora. It's most of the people are misusing AI, and they think that AI would do everything on behalf of them with losing any critical thinking or anything related to that. And this also brings me to the next point where I would like Andreas to talk about it, where while employing the human element or humanizing the implementation of AI. Of course, we have some ethics, data ethics and transparency issues. We have some issues related to maintaining the trust between the human element and the AI. So Andreas would like to provide more insights about this point.
Yes, thank you, Omar, and some great points from the panel. And I had a completely different answer till the last few days of the events that happen across the world about the use of AI and how we use some of the data and how everyone now has to send an email for an algorithm to justify, for example, their reason of existence in a organization. I will not name at that point, but that gives us a bit the perspective that, and also when we're talking about AI, what do we mean with AI? Are we only talking about a ChatGPT and NLP kind of approach, or it's good that we talked about healthcare, for example, going back to 2016-17, you did have AI algorithms that were predicting skin cancer, for example, better than some seasoned professionals. And if we're talking only about the side of the NLP, of the ChatGPT, of the interactions that we're having with all of these models, you do start realizing that the more we feed data and information that hasn't been filtered and haven't been control on what we're interacting, the results start becoming a bit more disappointing. And also that will have an impact on the ethics side that we're discussing on. People will not trust technology, and we can force technology to people, but if the individuals do not trust what they're using, we're going to be in a bit of an awkward situation. I think someone mentioned earlier that about the missile, of how the missile now try to see how we can make it work. I think even with the technology that we have now, and I look more into Asia, for example, some measures that I did, that we need to have a bit more human-centric approach to AI and technology. The technology will come to enable us rather than us trying to find what solution, what problem it will solve now that we have it. Quite an example that I usually give, quite fascinating, is that you're scrolling through your social media and you find toothbrush that they talk to you. Is that how we dream the AI to work and collect the information about my toothbrush? And that's where the ethics comes handy. And just to wrap it up, that I know that a lot of people say that Europe overregulates sometimes, but sometimes you just have to take the extra step to make sure that you can start minimizing a bit of the impact.
Thank you, Andreas. This is a crucial point, to be honest. And this brings me to the next question, where leaders nowadays, they are forcing AI in everything. If there's a use case or not, if there is an application for AI or not, they would like to embrace the emerging technology. They would like to embrace the AI in their operating model. From your perspective, Eric, and of course, I need to listen to Dora, Katie, and Angelo as well in this particular area. How can leaders guide their organizations to embrace AI responsibility within their operating model and within their teams as well? Also, if there is something that they can do for that, and you talked about the early steps in order to go to the higher levels of implementing AI and emerging technologies and so on and so forth. Is there any strategy or strategies that can leaders implement to ensure ongoing innovation within their teams, while, of course, aligning with the business objectives and maintaining the ethical standards that we already talked about?
Yeah, thanks, Omar. It's quite a large question you just posed.
Yeah,
I'll try to keep it a bit brief so the other panelists have also some time to respond to this. So I'll just answer a part of your question. Well, if you look at the Netherlands, where of course I'm from, we do a lot of experimenting with AI, like I just mentioned during the former question. And mostly this experimenting is still yet about automating things. Again, we're not using that full potential yet that AI has in store for us. Now, I am convinced that AI can aid us as architects, as I am, for example, in saving us time in creating architecture. So AI can support us in relating various elements of architecture to each other, even come up with very impressive visualizations, and all that in just matters of seconds. Whereas we as humans, we would need far more time to produce the same outcome. Now, since I'm all for practicing architecture in a more practical and pragmatic way, hence the title of my book, I've been playing around a bit with AI, and I try to test my theory when it comes to saving us time. All your listeners out there who will be joining us in the inner circle, you will find my handouts there, in which you can see an actual test case that I tried out. And maybe to give a little bit of context around this test case, for my book, I described this fictitious organization, and the organization developed a multi-year strategy, and they wanted to have the architect or involve the architect to help them execute that strategy. Now, when I wrote the book, I had to manually create all the diagrams for the strategy and manually relate all the drivers to goals and goals to objectives and whatnot. But now, with the help of AI, I was able to input this entire strategy, at least the text-based version, into this AI tool, then tell the tool to use an architecture framework of my choosing and to produce not only a visualization of the strategy, but also have it come up with the correct relations between the drivers, the goals, and the objectives. And again, all in matters of seconds. So I think that once we get a little more out of this experimental phase we are in the Netherlands, then I definitely see opportunities for AI to unlock its full potential. And I believe that if we can convince others around us, architects, that the use of AI saves us all valuable time, then we might be able to convince business leaders to embrace it more fully.
Thank you, Eric, for this perspective. And of course, I urge everyone to check this handout. Of course, I think it will be very helpful. And based on that, Dora, do you think that there are some strategies that leaders can implement to do so, the transformation and everything that we talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's organization, but it really starts from the top down with leaders. When I think of AI, sometimes I think of Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And I know AI is the latest thing, but we have to be careful that we don't do AI for the sake of AI, that we use the right tool and technology, right, for it. So even the upskilling and reskilling that I spoke about earlier, it's also for leaders to really understand and not fall in the trap of fear of missing out. We're going to do this because everybody else does it. One of the strategies, I should say, or I would suggest, is for leaders to not only also educate themselves as to what this is, but surround themselves with people they can trust, that can actually go beyond the surface. Because sometimes, especially people whose focus is, hey, I want to sell this, like vendors, right? For example, as people say, they might overstate what things do. And then we might get on to, okay, let's do this because it's a trendy thing. One of the strategies, I would say, surround yourself with people who really understand and that are well into, things to help focus on the right things, prioritize on the right things that are feasible and critical for the business. Another strategy, like we said, is really, and we spoke about I think it was Andreas that spoke about the human-centric values and what this means, right? Really just that culture and fostering that culture of being ethical. What do we use AI for? Making sure that we have risk policies, for example, mitigating risk, putting in guardrails, ethical guardrails, as you might say, to make sure that, hey, we're not using for the right reasons. We're looking at the right sources. People understand what it is, how to use it. And I would just offer one last strategy, which is, this is not a once and done, but it's whatever we're doing as we're catering to this, monitor and adjust as we go, especially things change very quickly. Keeping an eye on things and really adjusting or pivoting as necessary. I think that's also something that we need to keep top of mind and put those checkpoints, if you will, in the process. And when we do that, I would say it's important to just work collaboratively, transparently, and collaboratively across the different functions. Bring your experts from across the different functions to make sure that we're focused on the right things and we keep on fostering this responsible and ethical use of AI type of culture.
Very interesting point, Dora, and this brings up a critical point that I would like to hear Angelo about it. Do you think that design thinking may be employed in this particular process in the leadership integration of AI within the operating model?
Sure, yeah, and well, for one, absolutely. Design thinking, a lot of times when people think about design thinking, they think some fancy firm coming in with their fancy UX hats and doing a week-long workshop and talking to all the important people in the organization and spitting out some pretty documentation and then leaving and disappearing. Whereas as a UX professional, design thinking is part of your day-to-day, right? If you think about a scientist and the scientific method, right? Sure, there are those specific things that you do, hypothesis, testing, controls, variables. We all understand that. But if you're a scientist, the thing that you ingrain and understand is you don't make assumptions, you test everything, and you understand the difference between cause versus correlation, right? And a scientist who's always thinking about science does that naturally in their life, right? They're not going to assume things are true just because that's their profession. Design thinking is very much the same way, right? Like design thinking is about problem solving for one. So let me take a step back and say that the purpose of design thinking is to solve real problems that actually exist, not made up fuzzy problems, which is where we're at with AI. Like AI exists, how do we use it? And so it's dialing it back and saying, okay, let's start with an actual problem. Let's try to understand the reality of that problem, define it. And then if you're truly ingrained in the design thinking process, then you're going through those iterations of prototyping, actually trying it with real user, using empirical data, not just assumptions on what you think people will want, but how they'll actually use it in real life, in their real space. And one of the things, thinking strategically, which is something that I really enjoy doing with leaders, and I try to do every time I'm working with a new leader, is to really think about the vision, the user experience vision. We're all, as analysts and architects, we're all familiar with the idea of a vision, like where we're trying to go. But when we're talking about a UX vision, you're really talking about the personality, the brand of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And Dora had mentioned the idea of like guardrails. And when you're coming up with a UX or an experience vision, you're really not just saying, what do I want to be? But you're also saying, what do I not want to be? And usually when I do this kind of thought exercise with leaders, I usually just pull out a bunch of adjectives that are generally recognized as like positive, right? Usually, and I prefer to go with a lot, like 100 to 200, and say, categorize these. What are we, what are we not? And what are we already? And you'll find that some things that sound good, like traditional, for example, that's not a negative attribute. But if your goal as a company or as an organization or as a product is to be visionary, then you don't want to be traditional. And so you start to find these kind of lines where you're saying, I don't want to be these things. And as you think through that as a leader and talking through that, what do we want to be? What do we definitely not want to be? When we're talking about the ethics of these things, you're creating that mindset of these are the things we definitely want to be. These are the things we definitely don't want to be. So as you're thinking about what you're about to implement, as you're creating the boundaries on this product and these iterations, are you really trying to be what we're trying to be, or are you pushing us in a direction that's not what we want to be? And I think from a leadership perspective, that's something that you don't have to go through a whole exercise of organizing 200 adjectives, but just to think through, what am I? Who am I? What am I as a brand? And what do I not want to see in the headlines as my brand? And those should help steer the decisions you make when you're creating different features and functionalities and capabilities and giving access to information and all those types of things.
Awesome. And this brings us to a fundamental question. Do we really need an AI strategy, and why? Tiankai, Jesper, Andreas, and Jessica, could you share your thoughts on the necessity of an AI strategy, a fancy strategy, standalone strategy, rather than the business strategy and digital strategy? Do we need really an AI strategy in our business environment, newly business environments? Tiankai, please.
Sure. I think it's really, first of all, about how we define what a strategy is, right? Because I think over other days, when a strategy is like a 200-page document of a PDF that sits on a SharePoint that nobody will ever read through, and that just sits there for 5 years until it's replaced by another one, a strategy really needs to be actionable and something that people can remember to keep in mind whenever they do things and whatever they do, right? And for AI needing a strategy, I do see the need of a strategic alignment, but mostly because if we don't have an AI strategy, it feels like all the AI efforts might be diverging and might be unsynchronized, which doesn't only create inefficiencies, but also risks, right? By not knowing what the others are doing with AI and not having the right people looking over it, it might lead to all these bad scenarios that we were just talking about as well, right? So I often try to then basically think about what the questions are that a strategy should answer, right? Which is bringing, in my point of view, 4 elements together, right? One is what is exciting and innovative to do with AI, combined with what is valuable to do with AI from a business strategy point of view, what is allowed to do with AI from an ethical and legal point of view, and what is feasible to do with AI, which is technical capabilities and human skill set, right? And by trying to address all these four elements, it actually implies that you need to talk to different departments together and work together as a cross-functional unit to actually answer those questions, to then define what is the right thing to do, and to then basically minimize risks and then maximize the opportunities around it. So yeah, having, I think, a lean, I would call it, AI strategy is definitely important, but keep it alive, keep it living, adapt it if you need to, but some kind of an alignment between everyone who works in AI would be good.
Great perspective. Thank you, Tiankai. And Jesper, do you have any thoughts about the necessity of an AI strategy?
I think that was a really good answer to start with. And yes, I do think it is very important. And I'm going to change my answer now altogether based on a previous answer. I do quite a lot of AI strategy, and they look a bit different. And in the past, if you did a strategy, obviously current state, future state, the roadmap, etc. And we quite often start a strategy in the technology world by doing a proof of concept of some kind. We are testing the technology. Does it work? If it's working, we scale. We have been trying to do that in AI, and I don't think it's going to work. And the reason is that we're actually not really testing that technology. And I think a lot of conversations today actually hasn't been about the technology. It has been about the operating model, has been about the people, it has been about the human interaction, about empathy, all of the soft factors around the journey. Yeah. So I think, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just getting a few disturbances here on my end for some reason.
No worries.
Yeah, so I think that when we're doing our strategy and we're starting talking about scaling, it is really important that we understand all of these organizational elements. For example, your data governance. You can't embark on an AI strategy unless you have data governance. Your data has to be of a certain quality. You need to be able to trust it. It's just one of these foundations for AI. So that must be part of the strategy. If you do proof of concept, all of these parts of the operating model needs to be tested. So it's not only the technology side, you actually need to test all of the other organizational sides that need to come together when you're implementing AI. And that makes the AI strategy quite different.
I totally agree with you, to be honest. And I think, Andreas, if you can share some thoughts as well on this part, mentioning, of course, the data ethics as one of the elements within the strategy and so on and so forth.
Yes, and so that was some great answers already. Which the only thing I'll say, and I will try to add on top of that, is that every business have their own strategy. You do not have a strategy for legal. You don't have a strategy for IT. You do not have a strategy for compliance. There's one business strategy that we all have to focus on. From this business strategy, any data or AI strategy, and I wouldn't put AI different from the data at this point. I would put different from the IT, which I see a lot of business mixing it together between IT and AI. The data and AI strategy, or whatever we call it, has to derive from your key business strategy. So if you have this in mind, if you follow the key pillars that you will have on every business about your ethical approach of how your business wants to operate, that's what will also drive the users of the data, the users of AI, and the deployment. And how you can, the way that I always see it is, how can I enable the use of data and AI to achieve our objectives as a team? Because AI is not a small department, or data is a small department on the side that we can do our own fun things here and be excited. If it doesn't fit into the business strategy, then there's no point having a different one.
Totally agree. And I think, Jessica, this will bring us to the information management and how we architect all the information together between all these cross-functional teams.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm just touching on what Jesper just said about soft skills and the human element. And then also, Tiankai Feng, you mentioned also the sort of framework of the high level qualities and attributes. But what's interesting is we're pushed to task, especially with information management and information management strategy. If we pull the lens back, we're actually looking at what constitutes like an AI strategy, who's involved. Is it owned by one team? And what I see more often than not is not cross-functional delegation or cross-functional collaboration. But it's assigning it to, for example, the machine learning team. And the question is machine learning really positioned well and trained to organize information, to understand information management. And that is a fundamental issue because this is distributed across cross-functional teams. That's something we're all hitting on, is this is cross-functional. And so the organizations whose strategy is simply to assign it to machine learning and call it good, those are the ones that have a half-baked or not complete strategy. That is what is most concerning to me within the landscape. Really starting to look at what are sussing out and extracting or pulling out the different elements and actually forming a cross-functional team. That's the first step. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of strategies.
I totally agree with you. And yes, this is a very interesting perspective, to be honest. I think we have covered a lot today, and I know these insights are sparking thoughts among our audience. I would like to thank you all for this fruitful discussions and insightful discussions. Now it's time to bring Kitty. You have something to say?
Yeah, I've been enjoying listening to all the strategies. I've been waiting for the magic words, but it hasn't arrived yet. So I would like to take this opportunity to add these magic words. The purpose. CEO, CTO, business owner, before they even have the strategy, they have to know what's my organization, what's my purpose to use AI. There is no one size fits all. Remember, you have to think about the purpose first, then the strategy will come. That's me.
Very good input, crucial input, to be honest, Dr. Kitty. So thank you so much for this input. And yes, Elaine, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Omar. I don't have any questions here right now popping up, but I do have a couple coming from myself. The first one I would like to get is about what Dora was talking about, the aspect of critical thinking, and a couple of other people also brushed on that. And I was actually reading an article about that subject a couple of days ago, where they were saying that AI is reducing the ability for people to do critical thinking. And I was talking to Deidre actually yesterday, or probably something like that, that I feel it can be actually the total opposite of that, where when you ask AI to perform a bunch of different tasks, Eric was talking about how it can help to build your architecture. That's going to be part of my second question. But when you do that, you have to trust and verify, okay? The famous trust and verify. And if you have to verify, you have to think. And so I was wondering, does it really depend? Because I think what I can see is the total opposite, where AI can lead to much better critical thinking rather than the other. I can see both sides of it, but any thoughts on that?
Microsoft just came out with a really interesting paper. I'm not sure if it's the same one that you read, about cognitive offloading. It was a really well-designed study.
Yes, that's the one I was referring to.
Is that the one? Yes. So the cognitive offloading, which I think is fascinating because the study was designed that included a really wide range of ages and stages. And there was no difference really between the older and the younger sets in that study. That cognitive offloading, it's just that the older groups or populations were more aware of cognitive offloading happening. And I think that fundamentally it's something that we should be somewhat concerned with, only because critical thinking is essential for human brain development. Our brains continue to develop and evolve throughout our lives. And when we face issues like cognitive offloading and we reduce critical thinking skills, or at least soften them, then we're setting people up to have a difficult time navigating the world. And that impacts things like even information and media literacy, being able to disseminate between disinformation and misinformation, those sort of critical components. And it's very much, most learning frameworks or educational frameworks prioritize critical thinking as one of the main objectives. if we're softening that aspect, then aren't we changing education as a whole by default with AI?
Yeah, if I can just jump in here, I couldn't agree with what you just said. And I'll end because I brought that up. I think it's actually, so the point that I was trying to make, and I think it can go both ways, right? It can help critical thinking if you actually work with AI, say generative AI, and if you don't take for granted what it takes and you push back, you ask the hard questions and you can push back, it can actually help critical thinking. But I think, and the point that I was trying to make a lot is that, it's easy to fall in a trap. So it starts with us being aware that there's a trap here, that we can do that cognitive offloading. We think, oh, okay, whatever he tells us. And AI or generative AI can come back and speak authoritatively and just take us down a path, and we're taking it and it's okay, give me more. And then we just stop thinking for ourselves. So it's almost like a double-edged sword here, where we really, I believe, we need to be very cognizant and aware of it and work with it. When we do work with it, yes, it can help our cognitive abilities and critical thinking, but it is just so easy. It's like when calculators came out, and most people, we cannot even do very basic multiplication right now. I remember learning the multiplication table when I was a kid, and I still do it in my head, and it helps my critical thinking. But these days, we just speak to our phones and whatever, the computers and the POS systems do it for us. So we take these things for granted right now. We can't even think that way. Yeah, it's something to really be aware of and pay attention to, and not let it replace us from thinking, but as we were saying earlier, again, enhance our abilities and augment our abilities.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I would like to get into another question, and that covers things that Jessica was mentioning and Jesper and also Eric was covering. Eric talked about the handout, architecting with AI and building this example. And we've done something similar. But what I do wonder, and the point that Jessica was bringing about the data quality, and Jesper as well, there's a big gap between architecting with AI either on a clean slate that's might be still pretty good, or doing it as a demo versus doing it in an existing organization with all of its complexity, its idiosyncrasies, and so on and so forth. And what do folks here on the panel think about how to achieve this level of high quality and being able to trust what AI is doing in terms of helping this architecture driven AI that Eric was mentioning?
Yeah, if I may, I put my digital hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, so what the organization I work for is experimenting with creating this tool in which you can actually input all kinds of strategic documents like visionary stuff and mission statements and whatnot. And then have the tool go through all the texts that are in there and categorize certain elements or aspects of the text, and then visually present it to the people who actually should know how to interpret the material. And I think that is essential because like I mentioned in the example I gave, it's awesome to have a tool that saves us time, but eventually you still need people who can actually understand the output it generates. You still need knowledgeable people to interpret the output that saved you time in creating it. So I think AI is very nice in aiding us, but it can never replace us.
Yeah. But Jessica, you were mentioning the semantic aspect of your data and your ontology and so on and so forth, which is a bit different than working with free text or just purely textual paragraphs of text. Do you see a big difference there?
I do. And something that has become very evident with businesses is, I'll take the example of what does it mean for your business if you use an out-of-the-box taxonomy or ontology, the same as more than 60% of, for example, ChatGPT or OpenAI customers. If we're all using Google product taxonomy, and your business is not e-commerce, are you presenting your business correctly to AI systems? Like the way we define we take a lot of care in defining our business, defining objectives, defining approaches, defining business rules, but we don't realize how data structures, the semantics of how you structure your information landscape, how that is as important as a way to present your business definition, who you are. It's your digital thumbprint to AI. It's what's unique about your business. What do you do that's unique? What are your focus areas? I recently gave a presentation or talk where I discussed the issue with accessories as a category, just as an example. And the problem that we're facing is a high level of ambiguity and a misalignment with the outside world. Our internal business definitions don't necessarily align with the nomenclature or the language of the external world. So there's something called outer world and closed world assumptions that happens when we model ontologies to define our businesses. Both are equally important. Because we call it architecture internally at Adobe for a specific product, it may not be the same definition as architecture as it's defined outside of Adobe. The idea is to reconcile the open world with the closed world and put your best foot forward to describe yourself through data, to describe your objectives, your business rules, your business as a whole, what you do through data representation. And that's semantic enrichment. Because AI actually is more successful when you have descriptive context, when your data is semantically structured to describe and to invoke relationships between concepts, a better machine understandability.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Angelo was talking about the scientific method, empirical data, and I'd like to, maybe I'm getting on the data bandwagon, but Jesper, how would you apply that in terms of validating what is happening with AI?
Can you reframe that question for me, please?
So when Angelo was talking about the empirical data and the scientific method and not making assumption and so on and so forth, and you talk about the need for quality data how would you validate the data quality so it can be trusted from the outcome that they can apply to that data?
Add to that? Is that all right, Elaine? So maybe, Jesper, you had a great comment there. It's not just about the people and the strategy and all of those kind of things, but there's some real gritty, nitty stuff that we have to do if we are going to bring in AI, as you mentioned. Obviously, Angela also looked at design thinking and looking at actual information and actual ways of doing certain things. And obviously, Jessica, looking at your taxonomies and looking at how you're structuring your data is really important. So I think, Elaine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you were mentioning that how do you bring that all together? And I think this is really the point of connecting those different things. So what matters most overall? So are we looking at understanding? Are we looking at the people? Are we looking at the strategy? Are we looking at the empirical data and scientific methods that we're using? What does it all look like if you had to sum it up and you have to say, this is connecting the dot of what AI looks like? Hopefully I summarized that okay for you, Elaine.
Pretty good, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you summarize it?
It's almost a thesis, huh?
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, one of the key things that we're doing here is we're looking at architecting these things and the value of architecting, just as Jessica pointed out, and because our audience are architects and analysts, as you were pointing out, Jessica, having a good taxonomy, having a good strategy, having a good way to really understand the value, as Angelo pointed out. Everyone's pointed out good things. I don't want to only pick on a few. I think that approaching architecture with, or not architecture, AI with deliberate intent. In other words, going in from an architectural perspective to say, what does this landscape look like? How do we use the conceptual concepts that we have in business architecture, things like capabilities and policies, and linking all those components will be very helpful to get a better understanding of not only the business, but also how AI can be used effectively, even if we have really terrible data. And then secondly, be able to decide then what would the strategy be based on what does our architecture look like, and start there as a first start rather than going much further. I don't know if you want to add to that, Jesper, or not.
Yeah, I do, and I think you start with the proof of concept. So let's be really pragmatic here. So I'm doing a lot of proof of concept at the moment, and when it starts, it's very small. It's curated data. It's absolutely fantastic. Everyone is really excited and gung-ho to scale the solution. And then we realize suddenly that we're going from a small data set into a much larger data set. And we're talking about suddenly, okay, definitions are different. There are different parts of the organization that talk about the same thing. But as Jessica said, there are slightly different definitions. And that's inside the business. That doesn't even talk about outside the business, etc. So when we are scaling the proof of concept, all of these ugly things are really coming to the surface, all of the difficulties, all of the security classification, categorization, everything that is related to data governance. So finding the proof of concept is very interesting from a strategy perspective, because it's changing the perspective of strategy in an organization, because they suddenly truly starting to understand the data and the importance of the data. So this data centricity starts to come through. And that's one of my major observations, having done this a few times now.
Very good insight. Very good insight. Dora?
Thank
and
you.
Andreas.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to add this, and it was triggered from what you just said, Deirdre, right? We have many analysts and architects of the audience. I've been around for a very long time, 30 years in corporate. I've seen many technologies, and this is obviously AI, especially generative AI, the big hype these days. I call it buzz. What I've learned over the years is that this is here today, and this is sure, unlike anything else, it's powerful, right? But I think, Deirdre, to what you were saying earlier, I would say just to take a step back, it's another new kid on the block. It's another technology. There is a lot. But start with just the mindset of, okay, we'll look at it and we'll figure out how we're going to use this new tool or resource. I know, Deirdre, you and I had the conversation once, is this a tool, is it a resource, right? Whatever we call it, because I think it can get overwhelming sometimes. How do I use this new thing? It can do everything, right? It's the big thing right now, and it's so powerful. All I'm suggesting is just taking a step back and realizing it's here today. Tomorrow will be something different that's also big and trendy and great to help us do. But take a step back and figure out to understand what is it, how can I use it, and then just learn, right? One step at a time, one day at a time, just learn a little bit more. How can I use this? What for? In whatever the role is, as a business analyst, as an architect, as a leader of teams, whatever the role might be. So I just wanted to add that perspective to the conversation.
Great. Andreas, you raised your hand.
Yes, I like that point, Dora. It's here today. It's not going to be here tomorrow, and I could agree more with you there. Just very two quick points from my side is the first one on what we're discussing is that there's not one solution fit all. You cannot just say I take that off the shelf and it will solve all of my problems. I don't have to do anything else now. I have AI, and I think that's where most of from my experience working with quite a few on the consulting side, a lot of my clients, they always think, oh, we just take that off the shelf, solve all our problems. Even with IT, how many systems do you have that even on, let's go very simple, HR, everyone thinks that Workday is one solution fits all, which is one of the best things that ever happened on this planet. And then you have a few thousand Excel spreadsheets flying around because there's so many things that it doesn't do. And the second part is that we always forget, which is very typical on software development, is fail fast. Don't be scared to fail. Some of the things that you're going to do are not going to work, and that's okay. And you learn something, and you're not going to repeat your mistake. And that's, again, quite valuable because someone else will not come in and say, let's do that again. You'll say, we did it, failed, etc. But the thing that I find with the fail safe is we're scared of failing because failure sounds so bad. And so we're gonna do everything it takes to make it a success. And then we go live with the solution and we get a lot of not very positive feedback, and we then try to fix the feedback, not the problem, which is
Throw good money at that.
Yes.
Excellent. Unless somebody has any other question, I think that would wrap up the question. Raise your hand. Okay, I got Kitty. Go ahead.
Yeah, just as a conclusion, like a wrap up, AI still has the hallucination, and it's still the ongoing issues. For organizations, we have to educate the employees before they even try the tools. They have to understand what the AI literacy, AI security, AI ethics, AI limitation, including hallucination, and also the human side of it. Be smart. Human oversight and decision loop. Be smart. Don't believe everything turning out from AI, because hallucination is so convincing. It just it sounds like telling you the truth, but it's just a pack of lies. Yeah.
Yeah. It can take you to a dead end very easily. I say to people, it's very knowledgeable, but with very little wisdom. Yes, Jesper.
I think a lot of these conversations have been around AI today. AI is evolving at a rapid pace. It's literally getting perhaps not smarter, but it's getting more capable every day. Who was it? Sam Altman, he said a couple of weeks ago that he is believing that AGI, artificial general intelligence, is only about 18 months or 2 years away. So we are facing a future where AI at some stage is going to be smarter than us. It will be able to solve our problems better than we can solve them today. That is going to be a very big pivot for both business and humanity. Clearly, we're not there yet, but clearly it's coming towards us quite quickly, I believe anyway. Everybody to prepare for that world.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Jessica?
I think leaning in.
Oops. Jessica disappeared. She must have pushed the wrong button. Let's go with you, Andreas.
No, I will just quickly challenge that on the fact that language is dynamic, it's not static. The way we communicate and the way we write and the way we articulate information changes every day. And I do honestly believe that AI will be able to process information faster, as it currently does, and that's why it's great. And it's going to be able to come to some conclusions for some things quicker than we can, expressing some of the logical, humanly acceptable solutions, and being on the AGI. I think that this will happen if we stop progressing as humanity, and that's where I think we will. I think that it may come in a form, but it's not going to be as futuristic as people currently think. But hopefully I'm going to be challenged, be wrong on that.
Yeah, but I think in terms of AGI, can AI end up in X number of years being able to come up with the next big revolutionary thing that's going to happen? I don't know whether it's in technology or whatever else. Will it invent totally new things that we don't have today, or will it help somebody with the vision and an idea to bring it to fruition? So, Jessica, you're back.
I'm back. I don't know what happened there. It was technology. Something that I am very interested in, and I think that we also lose sight of, is that there's a progression. There's of cultural technologies. This is an area that I've been exploring quite a bit, is that we've gone from, within the spectrum of history and technology, we've gone from paper to publishing, fast forward thousands of years to the internet. Those are all cultural technologies. And so when we look at AI, it's also how do we integrate AI and the AI ready tooling or use cases as a cultural technology? Because without humans, there is no AI. We sometimes forget that AI is meant to help humans and be tools for humans. The American College of Research Libraries, the ACRL, they have basically the parameters for a successful AI tool within that purview. And their statement is no human, no AI, because the idea is we're partners. And so it has to prove its weight. It has to prove its value. And we have the right as humans to be a little bit more critical or discerning of what is acceptable and what is not.
Great point. Great point.
All right.
Deirdre, I'll pass the baton to you.
We'll have a bit of a climb. I just wanted to ask Rudy if you wanted to ask a question while you're here quickly.
No, thank you. It's
Okay.
very interesting. Thanks so much.
All right. Nice to see you again, Rudy. Okay, so just want to say thank you very much, Omar. You spent a lot of time working through the questions and working through the guest speakers. I appreciate your time spent on that. Elaine, same thing. Great questions. We could go a lot deeper. I know this. We just don't have a day. But I'd love to go a bit further. Team, I want to just send my thanks to you that we've had to record this. I wanted you just, if you give you an opportunity to summarize what you think would be great. That would be great. And I'm talking like just a snippet. I know that Kitty, you gave a great snippet. So did you, Jesper. I love your thinking. It's really futuristic. So let me start with Andreas, just because you're on top of my screen. Maybe just give a short close to the group.
Just quick summary. The future is here. Enjoy the journey. There's no destination. Just take every day as it comes with the AI and the data, and it's a really nice journey to go.
Awesome. Your turn.
Who was that? You broke
Kitty?
off, Rowie. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Long
Kitty.
time.
Do you want to give us a quick summary?
So what's the way forward is I still maintain that we need humans, but in different purpose in the future. So if someone is not changing themselves, is not upskilling themselves, they will definitely be replaced. However, it's not the human nature that we sit at home cry and without the job. It's not like that. We move on, we learn new skills. There are so many problems in the world that waiting for us human to solve. I think Alan, he said earlier, AI is not is knowledgeable, but it's not clever. We are clever. So we make use of our human skills, work with AI like a partner, co-pilot, and to raise our value and continue to contribute to the good of the society. That's my summary.
Elaine, you next in the list of your summary?
No, I'm not sure if I have a real summary. I think it was a very interesting talk that has touched on many different subjects, and I have so much to think about and reflect and on all of those great opinions that I've heard. Quite happy about how this turned out.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Eric.
everybody, by the way.
Yeah, and then maybe to quote you, Angelo, I think we're really getting there in catching up with that missile that's floating around ahead of us. We will get there eventually. I don't know how long it takes and how fast we get there, but I'm sure we'll catch up to it.
Angelo, thanks, Eric.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm similar to Elaine. I learned a lot from everybody. I took little snippets from everybody, and the thing that I would think that people should take away from this is that there's lots of professionals out there with little nuances in their perspectives, and it's just valuable to get all of those perspectives, because I think when you put them all together, you get a much better picture of what we can accomplish and how we can go forward.
Yes, thank you. Omar.
First of all, I would like to thank you all. I was very interested in this discussion. It was my pleasure to run and moderate these questions. And for me, I have learned a lot from your perspectives. And I would say that connecting the dots is crucial. And today we have connected the dots between different disciplines. All of you have different disciplines and different perspectives, and we connected them together today. And I'll be ready for the missile. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I think after hearing all of you speak as well, and I reflected on how we often think of AI being this really wondrous magic wand almost, right? But in the end, it's still supposed to be a tool, right? In the end, it's actually a tool is supposed to be used by human beings, and it depends on what we do with it, right? And we can use it for the good, we can use it for the bad, but since it's a tool, it should not amplify the bad things about humanity, but the good things about humanity, I believe, right? And that means that we should actually let AI learn from us what we are good at, which is doing things responsibly, creating value, working together on things, critical thinking, all these kind of things to guide it, and not just let it happen, because otherwise chances are it's going to learn the wrong things from us. So yeah, I think all of you gave me also a lot of impulses to think about that aspect. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiankai. Dora?
I echo everything I just heard everybody say, so many great points. I'm just simply going to say, just keep on learning, never stop learning. There's always so much to get into. And again, the big scary thing, how do we do it responsibly? How do we do it ethically? What do these things mean? So keep on learning, and not just for the sake of learning, but learning meaningfully, understanding and how to use it. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. And again, thank you for being here. Great conversation with everyone. And I'm learning myself from everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Dora. Jesper, final thoughts?
No, I think it has been said really so far, so I'm happy not saying anything else.
Jessica, last but not least, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. This was really a pleasure just discussing with everyone and understanding the different perspectives. And I think we had some really interesting intersections as well. That shows how multifaceted and multidimensional AI is, and that it may seem like there's like almost an arms type race to, I liken it to the golden spike. It's the building of the American Railroad. It's the last one to put that golden spike in gets to own the railroad. And that's the vibe. And I think there was a measure of sanity in today's conversation that integrated learning and the human element and just really examining and understanding AI for what it is, which is a tool. So, yeah. Thank you.
That's all. So thank you, everybody, for your time, taking the risk for our first panel discussion and sharing your insights. I appreciate you. I've appreciated your views from when I met you. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll call it a wrap. That's it for our first.
Thank you.
Thanks. We all take away home. We all have a takeaway home. Yeah. Thank you.
Next time we'll come
Bye-bye.
up with a science
everyone.
analogy.
See you.
Nice to see you.